Welcome to the Attorney Post, your source for inside baseball talk about the legal field with the top attorneys in the country. Here's your host, Justin West.
All right, I think we're live. Hello and welcome again to the Attorney Post. I'm your host, Justin West, and I am joined today by Catarina Benitez. And she works with Lawvex, and we're going to learn about who Lawvex is, what it is that they do, what makes them very unique in their marketplace. And I think we're going to have a really good conversation, particularly about things like estate planning today, which is something that a lot of people put off until the end. But if you put it off until the end, it's too late. So you definitely want to make sure you got your ducks in a row before the end finds you. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes here. I'm going to actually jump over really quickly, share my screen so you guys can see the Lawvex website, which looks just like this. That's lawvex.com. And then before we get started, as usual, I'm going to do a quick read from one of our sponsors. And our first sponsor today is going to be Hundreds of Customers Rocket SEO. I'll pull that up there. Rocket SEO. Are you a business owner who knows that being on page one of Google is important, but you're afraid to work with an SEO company because you know that SEO is both expensive and slow? Well, not anymore. Rocket SEO from Hundreds of Customers forces you to page one of Google safely and legally through the power of the news media. National media campaigns that rank instantly boost your website's ranking in Google in 1 week or less with a super simple system that leverages the power of major media companies and major network affiliates of ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox all across the United States to put you on page one in Google in under a week, oftentimes repeatedly on page one multiple times for the same phrase and for related phrases as well. For more information about Rocket SEO, visit hundradsofcustomers.com/rocket. That's hundreds of customers all spelled out, hundradsofcustomers.com/rocket. All right. And now I am joined with the lovely Catarina. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Catarina is a fierce advocate for families and homeowners, and she is currently a partner with Lawvex.com. She also works with businesses. She's a member of the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, the Fresno County Bar Association, Fresno County Women's Lawyers Association. She's admitted to practice before all of the courts of the state of California, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, and the United States District Courts for every district of California. So it's a pretty impressive resume right there, and I'm sure I missed some stuff. So question one, always, Catarina, is what I miss?
Well, I've been an attorney for 13 years. I've been with Lawvex almost 2 years, handling with Lawvex estate planning for the most part. I also handle litigation as well, both estate plan or probate litigation as well as real estate litigation. And I really, have a love and passion for what I do. And I think Lawvex brings a unique situation, especially because of COVID, to our clientele, where we are uniquely situated to be able to help our clients remotely as well as in person. And so we have a great format. And we also aren't a 100-person attorney, which gives more one-on-one contact for clients. And they seem to appreciate the fact that they have that close relationship with all of the attorneys at Lawvex.
All right. So when I saw your company, the name jumped out at me. The name is Lawvex. And of course, I can see two words in there. I can see the word law, which you're an attorney, so that makes sense. And I see the word vex, and I have to laugh because most regular people who aren't attorneys are rather vexed by the law. I find reading through even my taxes can be vexing at times, let alone the law. So tell me a little bit about Lawvex. Tell me about, obviously, the name. I'm sure it means a little something to people. And just tell me a little bit more about its beginnings and your relationship with Lawvex.
So the actual name is, to vex means to annoy or to frustrate.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the name came from the ability for us to be able to take out that frustration and annoyance of the legal process for our clients, and to really give a humanistic approach to attorneys, because people usually come to attorneys when they're desperate, not because they're enjoying life. They always are in need of something. And many times they come to us begrudgingly. And so we want to make sure that we are a law firm that's approachable, and that we are a firm that tells people that we can take care of you and that you're in good hands.
Okay. So what exactly is the scope of the services that you offer to people? It sounds like you do a number of things. I was looking on the website. Obviously, it looks like they focus around a lot of estate planning stuff, but also some real estate and some business. So, what really is the scope? Why would I or the average person want to come with you? What sort of services will be coming to Lawvex to get?
Well, we are primarily an estate planning firm. So we handle estate planning from the formation. We also handle probate. So for individuals who pass away without an estate plan, we handle that process. We also handle trust administration, where after someone passes away, if they had a trust in place that needs to be administered, meaning that the beneficiaries need to receive their share, we assist with that process. We also assist with litigation. So if there are potential beneficiaries, usually family members involved, who are fighting over something that they believe they're entitled to, we also help with that as well. And we also handle real estate matters, as well as general litigation for those real estate matters and probate matters, and some family law as well.
Okay, so you guys do you do a lot. You're pretty full service there. So what sets you apart? I can see some people saying, and in our pre-roll, we talked a little bit. I can imagine some people saying, well, aren't you guys just a fancy legal Zoom or something like that? What separates you from a lot of those other run-of-the-mill, legal style businesses that are out there? What's the Lawvex difference?
So Lawvex has a unique approach to the way that we handle clients. We are an in-person service. So we handle clientele in person. We right now, because of COVID, we had been doing everything remotely, but we also have the capability to handle meetings with clients both by video and by phone. The big thing that sets us apart from just a general run-of-the-mill website is not only there are services in terms of attorney services, but also our product. So anyone can go to a website and get documents prepared. What sets us apart from just a document preparer is that we actually provide the expertise and the knowledge that a document preparer isn't going to have and going to provide. They provide a rubber stamp on those services, and our services are uniquely crafted around our clients' needs.
Okay. So working with an attorney for something like, I imagine it's a little different if you're doing a basic thing, like maybe just incorporating as an LLC versus, becoming an S corp or organizing a 501c3c, whatever it is. Brain is not working today. What are some of the benefits that come from what you guys do specifically versus a lot of the other services that are out there?
So what we provide is we provide ongoing maintenance for our clients. So as our clients grow in age and grow in family members, we are able to move with them as they progress in life. So rather than a document preparer who will build a one-stop shop at one time, we actually are able to build with our clients. So for example, let's say our client is 30 years old, single, wants to come to us because he or she has a house. Well, eventually at some point in time, they might get married, they might have children, they might acquire multiple properties, and they might need additional services for those additional needs. So for example, if we have an estate plan at that time when they're 30 years old, 20 years down the road, they have all of these other items or other family members that they want to make changes to, we can handle all of that as well. We also handle the real estate side of it. So as our clientele's financial portfolio grows, they can also continue to meet with us, to consult with us and how to handle that from a legal perspective, not a financial planning perspective, but it's more of an asset protection, I would say, more of an asset protection perspective. And so that's a feature that we provide as an attorney service, is that I like to tell our clients, we age with you, so to speak, because we're able to help those clients along the way as their life needs change.
Okay. That's a good way to put it. The website uses the phrase hub and spoke model. Can you talk about that at all, or what exactly that means with the way that you guys operate?
So with the hub and spoke model, we do a lot of online based services and cloud based services. So we partner with a service called Clio, which is a cloud based platform where a lot of our communications can be facilitated through Clio. So for example, if a client wants to send a message, we don't have to use cell phones in terms of sending text messages. We can send messages directly through Clio. If our clients want access to documents, they're able to create a profile and access their particular documents. So they don't have to call all the time and say, oh, was this particular document filed? Was this particular document created? They can go in and see what was generated. And then they can also see their billing as well. And it allows them to have a streamlined process for invoices, for billing payment, and for general day-to-day communication. If they feel that they need to get in contact with us, it's all at the touch of a phone, so to speak, rather than having to come into our office for everything or having to make a phone call. Everything's easily accessible. And we started that before COVID. So the nice part about it, because I'm a newer addition, so to speak, to Lawvex, I learned that Lawvex had this situation already set up. So once COVID hit, we were actually perfectly prepared for clients to come on board with us online and through our cloud service because we already had everything set in place.
Gotcha. That was actually going to be one of my next questions was just in general how COVID affected you guys and whether you made some of the changes towards what you're doing or with what you're doing because of COVID or if you were already in place. But that kind of answered my question. So how many clients do you guys usually see in a live capacity, like a face-to-face versus Zoom or versus phone call? Are the majority of your clients digital clients in a sense, or do you still have a good number that come in physically?
Well, it depends on what the client is there to do. Most of my particular clients are digital or by phone. They do come in to see me for document signing. So for estate plans, we do need original documents. And part of our estate plan process is the final stages to sign documents do require an in-person meeting. So they come in, they sit down, they meet with me. We review their entire estate plan. It's a pretty large binder full of documents. So we go through those very carefully. And that is usually the only in-person meeting we have unless a client specifically wants an in-person meeting for a different purpose. So if a client insists they want an initial what we call an initial consultation or initial meeting face-to-face, then usually I can accommodate that. But right now, because of COVID, we were preferring to do things either by video or by phone.
That's fair. I think a lot of people are preferring that these days. And I talk to a lot of attorneys, and that's one of the things I see. A lot of people are saying it's really nice. In fact, is it makes a lot of things faster. New guys that had hour-and-a-half commutes that now have 5-second commute just downstairs or or whatnot. And of course, as we all know, when you're working from home, pants are totally optional. So people like that and go to work in your slippers and nobody even has to know, which is great. So what brought you to Lawvex itself? What when you got into law, when you started to learn law, what areas did you think you were going to go into, and is where you are right now where you thought you would be? And if so, what drew you there? And if not, what drew you there?
So I started practicing in 2008. When I started, it was at the peak of the foreclosure crisis. So
Yes.
I started handling kind of just by accident a lot of the foreclosure issues. And there weren't any attorneys, at least in this area, who really understood not only the legal document side of it, but also the bank side of it and how they were processing loans, how they were handling foreclosures, how they were handling payment schedules. And so I pretty much was crash coursed into it because I received a number of calls with individuals not knowing where to turn. And so I just said, okay, well, we're going to figure it out together. One of my very first clients, we kind of joked that he was my guinea pig and he knew that. And I ended up having a case that went up on appeal, and it changed a lot of how judges viewed the foreclosure crisis, at least in California, for a few years because of that. And after the real estate market kind of settled down a little bit, and those particular clients started acquiring other properties, even if they've lost properties, they were going back and buying homes, they were buying rentals. So I kind of followed my clients along as they were, like I said earlier, growing. And then some of them started coming back to me wanting estate plans, and they wanted trust prepared, and they wanted real estate services. And they were areas that I initially had not really explored, because I was so busy with the real estate stuff that it just wasn't on my radar. But pretty soon, because I had a number of my own personal clients coming to me wanting those services, it came to a point where I was, prior to joining Lawvex, I had my own office. I had two offices actually, one in Fresno County in California and one in Madera County, which are about 30 minutes driving distance apart. And it got to the point where it was becoming a lot of work just for myself. And so I actually met with Gary Winter, who's a managing partner at Lawvex. I knew him from law school, and we spoke. I ended up joining Lawvex, bringing my clients over here, and handling estate planning through Lawvex. And then from there, started building, in a pretty short period of time, started building clientele that way. And because I already had a litigation background, it made it an easier transition because of that process. And because of the real estate background there as well, it seemed like a really good fit, for me anyway. And it's been nice. I mean, estate planning is a very different way of practicing law. I mean, it does get aggressive at sorts, but it's not aggressive like a family law perspective. Mm-hmm. It's more of a hybrid, collaborative, and aggressive type of law. So it gives me a little bit of a balance. And with estate planning itself, it's not always litigation intensive. And so I feel like I am really providing a service and helping families versus always having to fight with someone. So it's really been a great, not only experience for myself, but I feel as though I have clients who are generally happier because they're coming to an attorney, not because they're desperate or because they're afraid of losing something, but because they want to make sure that they're protecting what they worked so hard to achieve. And a lot of times what happens is they understand that they have to protect these things, but they don't know how, and they don't know what their options are in terms of leaving property to their children, leaving property to grandchildren or to churches. And so there are many different options that our clients are able to kind of explore with us, and they don't feel as though that they are under a time crunch or, facing a litigation issue, where they're able to kind of just sit down and create it more under a relaxing atmosphere.
Gotcha. So what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about estate planning? Do they come
that
to you
it's
with
easy? I think that's the biggest one. And I think the reason why is because of all of the Google search. You do a Google search, and regardless of the type of law, everyone wants to be a Google attorney. I read this on Google and this is what I think it means. And they come to us with this mindset, sometimes with this mindset that I'm going to pay you and you're just going to create a piece of paper for me, and that's going to be it. And I'll go on my merry way. And they have a set price in mind because they think that all we're doing is drafting the document. Right. But what they don't understand is that we have to carefully craft those documents to make sure that, number one, they're protected. Number two, that their family members who are going to be the beneficiaries are protected, and that there's a connection between what they want and what their beneficiaries are going to receive. And a lot of times it takes multiple meetings for that to happen, because sometimes I can't really gauge what someone wants through a phone call. Mm-hmm. And so it may take 2 or 3 phone calls. You have, for example, someone will call me and say, I have family member, I have 3 daughters and a son, and this is what I want to do. Okay, great. Well, then we get a couple of phone calls in, find out, well, they had 2 other children who passed away, who were not included. Well, they passed away, so I didn't think that was a big deal. Well, it is a big deal because they may have children, their children may have children that we may have forgotten about, maybe not intentionally. And so a lot of that information, a lot of times people forget, so if you're creating a document from, let's say, a Google template, you're not going to have all of that information in. And it's very easy to miss. And then if you pass away and you forget that information, that could create a situation where it has to be probated, which is what you're trying to avoid by having to create the estate plan in the first place. So it really is important to meet with an attorney rather than having a document service, because you really get the attorney really gets to understand what your desires are versus punching something into a website and having it shoot out a piece of paper, because that doesn't always, provide safeguards so you're protected.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, we all we all think we know more than we know when it comes to areas that are outside of our wheelhouse. And if you ever, I joked about this beforehand too. I said, if you ever want your errors to know your errors, your error, it's hard to say those words and differentiate them. But if you want your errors to know your errors, then do it yourself and don't speak to an attorney. But if you want to cover all your
Right.
bases. So have you ever encountered a scenario where somebody did on their own and just all heck broke loose, or there were huge problems that happened because they used one of those, online forms rather than talking to an attorney?
Yes. So one of the biggest things that I've seen is where someone creates a form on their own with property that they have at the time they create the form, and then they just never update it because they think that once I create this document, I'm good. When I pass away, someone will get whatever I have. Well, in that scenario, the individual acquired properties after creating their initial estate plan that were not included in their trust. Those properties actually had to be probated. And it created a problem where family members ended up fighting over those particular properties because there was no safeguard in place on how those particular properties were going to be distributed. When there's no safeguard in place, there's no trust estate planning in place, then California law kicks in and there are percentages in terms of shares that are given out to family members based on what their position is in the family. And that was not necessarily, probably not really the intent of the person who passed away, given what they had created in their estate plan. So it does create problems, and it does sometimes create litigation because there are a lot of unknowns and a lot of guesses on how a person who's passed away interpreted something. And so that's one of the pitfalls in do-it-yourself method.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's a good reminder to anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. Make sure you get these things taken care of before it's too late, because once it's too late, it's too late. That's what too late means. And you want to definitely make sure that you've got all your bases covered, and you don't want to leave a scenario. And I've heard of multiple scenarios or multiple situations where the parents die and it rips the family apart, and that's the last thing I think the parents ever would want was to see the family dissolve over property disputes. But I personally talked to dozens of people that have seen that happen, and so I definitely think when it comes to estate planning, this is a very, very important aspect of it, and making sure you've got someone who is making sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, so to speak, is very, very important. So, Catarina, have you so this is a question that it takes a little more humility to answer, but have you ever had a moment in practicing law where you biffed it, and maybe you thought something was going to go one way and it went a totally different way instead? And if so, what happened, and what lesson did you learn? Because I think failure, or at least missing the mark, sometimes it's a good teacher for all of us. So has there ever been a moment where you just kind of like you failed yourself forward in a sense?
Yes, and it wasn't in the estate planning context. It was when I was doing more family law. I had a trial where one of my client, actually, there's a lot of information that they didn't disclose to me that came out at trial and ended up really, really hurting them. And, as much as I stress just with every client to make sure that they tell me everything, because the more they tell me, the more I'm able to prepare and really assist them. Um, for whatever reason, the client thought, well, that wasn't important. And it came out, and it ended up affecting the outcome of that particular case because that was information I could have shielded the client from, or I could have consulted with her to explain to her, okay, this is how you handle it. This is what you're going to be asked about that particular issue, and this is how you take care of it. And without really knowing the full picture, it really created a disservice, not only for my client, but for me, because my job is to protect my client. My job is to help them to fulfill whatever it is they want. And I couldn't really do that in that particular case because, the client didn't really give me all of the information. And to be fair, I don't think in that situation, I don't think the client was trying to be dishonest with me. I think that was one scenario where my client just thought it wasn't important. And so she left a lot of that out. And so it ended up becoming an important issue. And that's why with all my clients, I stress to them, make sure you tell me everything, even if it takes a couple of meetings, because that way it gives me an idea to know what you want and what your goals are, rather than having to guess, and to prepare, especially in the litigation context, to prepare my client in a way that they may not be fully prepared themselves. Once they get on the stand and once they testify, they may not know exactly what they're going to be asked by the other side because they have not provided all the information clearly.
Gotcha. So the flip side of that is a good win. Have you ever had a moment where you picked up on something that everyone else was missing out on and came in and basically just saved the day in some capacity, or saved the client a lot of money or heartache or struggle or time or whatever it happened to be? When is a time that you won, and what helped you win in the way that you won, if that makes sense?
Yes. Well, I guess there was one. We actually, it was through mediation where we mediated. We actually provided documentation to a particular mediator who happened to have knowledge of, this was a real estate case, who happened to have knowledge about real estate financing and how that worked. And that particular mediator was able to assess from a financial perspective versus just a run of the mill real estate case, and brought the other side to their knees, so to speak, to say, look, your case isn't very good. You have all of these things alleged, but here's the documentation that you've been provided with that you didn't properly analyze. And my client ended up actually, they resolved it, but it was a win, so to speak, for my client because of that documentation, because we were prepared, and because we had really analyzed the situation better. And really got lucky, that we had a mediator who understood those figures and understood how to address those financial matters.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And that's awesome. So here in a minute, I'm going to dig in a little bit further and kind of ask you just some more fun personal questions. So I think people like to know the attorneys that we're talking to. However, before we do that, we're going to go over and just read one more word from our other sponsor here. So we'll just jump up over there. And our next sponsor, our second sponsor today, is again, Personal Injury Attorney Leads, or injuryattorneyleads.com. Personal injury attorneys spend a lot of time and money on advertising, but it is difficult to get qualified leads. You're usually paying for leads that are not qualified, or worse, you're getting leads from the internet that are no longer interested in talking to an attorney, if you ever even get a hold of them. These leads can cost between $100 and $500 a piece, and you can usually burn through 5 to 10 of them before you find a serious prospective client on the phone. The solution is injuryattorneyleads.com. Injuryattorneyleads.com will live transfer people directly to your law firm who have been in an accident and who want to talk to a lawyer about their case. You can be sure that these potential clients meet your criteria for a qualified lead, and close rates can be as high as 60%. Set up a time to talk to a client generation specialist today by visiting injuryattorneyleads.com and scheduling a time to talk with a competent client generation specialist. That's injuryattorneyleads.com. There we go. All right. So here's more of a fun question, but I always like to see who kind of shaped you and helped you become who you are. So who would you say, Catarina, are maybe the 2 or 3 people that most influenced you in your career path, and how did they do that?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say my mother was one who was really big on education, and that was not really an option around our house in terms of, are you going to go to college? Or are you going to do something afterwards? It was when, which really from day one sparked motivation in me to go to college, to continue after that, and attend law school. I didn't have any attorneys in my family, and I still don't. Actually, I'm the only attorney in my family. So
you're the black sheep or the white sheep.
Right. Well, I'm the one that everyone comes to for free legal advice, basically.
Yeah. Hey, I got a speeding ticket.
Right. Yeah, regardless of what it is. So, yeah, I would say she, and to this day, she's probably my number one cheerleader, and really just, I'm grateful to her for that. I've had a number of mentors along the way who've really assisted me and really guided in terms of, helping me advance my career and advance just my love for the law and the passion that I have. There isn't one particular person, because I think, I've had a number of friends and a number of peers who are older than me, other older attorneys, judges, who've really influenced the way that I not just handle tackling the law, so to speak, but really understanding the client from their perspective. Because attorneys, we have a unique situation in the sense that we are not always really emotionally invested in a particular client's case. And so it's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Good thing in that we're able to see things from a distance and really have a different perspective. But sometimes it can hinder us too, because we don't particularly, we can empathize with our client, but because we have not particularly been in that situation, it makes us a little bit of an outsider. And so having that empathy and having that knowledge at the same time, I think puts attorneys in a unique situation, again, versus like a document preparer or somebody like that, where we're able to really cater to our clients' needs and make sure that they are taken care of.
Gotcha.
I have a friend who recently looked for an attorney, and there are a couple of us, 3 friends who are attorneys. She's not an attorney, but she needed one. And one thing that she said that really stood out to her was, she didn't know where to start. And so she wanted to make sure she found someone that she felt comfortable with, which is a big issue, because you don't get that sense when you find, somebody that you Google on the internet, a document preparer. You want someone who you're going to feel comfortable with, and you want someone who you feel is going to advocate for you, even if it's just to prepare an estate plan. And that's our job.
Gotcha. So what has changed in maybe the last 12 months or so since the pandemic has hit us, not just in how you talk with clients, but what sorts of things are changing in the field of estate planning? Like how do you stay on top of what is changing? I'm assuming there's new laws that come out and new regulations and things that you have to kind of keep abreast of, but what are those big changes? What are they? How do you stay on top of them, and how do you adjust and plan for those?
Well, I think one of the benefits to having multiple attorneys in our office is that we are always keeping each other apprised of changes in the law, as well as just scenarios that they see every day that, I may not see something, but another attorney in my office may see something. So it creates, more of an educational experience for me. I think one of the most recent changes in California anyway was Proposition 13, which changed the way that property could be transferred and assessed for property owners. It was created to protect individuals who were affected by the fires that happened the last few years in California, to protect their property and allow them to purchase new property outside of the fire-ridden areas without losing their property exemption. But it also created a problem for those who are not affected by fires and wanted to transfer, let's say, property from a parent to a child. Then it triggers a new property tax trigger. So it's created some protections, but it's also created some problems for clients. And so that has been one of, I think, the bigger changes recently. That just happened in February, where we were starting to go through clients and making sure that they were properly protected before that deadline.
Gotcha. That's good to know. Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. Let's say iron sharpens iron and lawyers sharpen lawyers. So I'm sure working in a big network environment with all those lawyers there is helpful. Now, obviously working from home, I'm sure you have a business casual approach, but one of the things I saw when I was on the Lawvex website, and maybe I'll pull that back up just so our client, or just so our if you're watching this on the YouTubes, you guys can see this here. We'll jump back over to the website, but you guys seem to lean a lot on the fact that you're in a lot of ways very casual. I saw this was a really fun picture of you guys hauled, just in polo shirts, but you don't really think of an attorney in a polo shirt. So let me just ask you one final time, for our listeners, what really sets you guys at Lawvex apart? Why should they, want to work with you guys over and above most other law firms out there? What do you guys bring to the table? And what makes your approach just so radically unique from what a lot of other people do? Maybe you can kind of recap on that for us.
Sure. I think the biggest thing is having that one-on-one contact with your attorney and really having that relationship built with your particular attorney. a lot of times with bigger firms, what happens is people get lost in the shuffle. They go between staff members and whatever attorney they're, well, what I say attorney du jour. So whatever attorney happens to be there at that time. And, the attorneys that we've had at Lawvex have been there for some time. We have a great clientele basis. A lot of us have brought clients from other offices over to Lawvex. And the thing that sets us apart is that we're able to maintain those relationships and really, as I stated before, grow with our clients and allow them to be able to rely on us for pretty much any legal issue that they may have.
Awesome. So one final question, and as I'm asking this, I am scrolling down. If you're watching this, these are a lot of people's reviews. They've got some amazingly glowing reviews online, and you guys can read along with these. Feel free to pause the screen and take a look. But we'll end on kind of a fun question as well. What do you like to read?
Well, right now they're children's books. I have an almost 3-year-old in that format, so that seems to take up a lot of my non-working time. I think the last novel I read was the Alexander Hamilton biography. It's what the musical is based on, and I read that. That was probably, I want to say, last year when COVID started hitting. So that was the last one I would say. But recently, Dr. Seuss is pretty much on my my list.
So have you memorized Fox and Socks yet? Because that's a tough one, and I had it memorized at one point. I've lost it in recent years a little bit. I could go through most of it, and I can say it with the book and not get my tongue all twisted. But that's a good one.
that is a difficult one. Yeah, my hat's off to you for that one.
All righty. Well, I think we're close to the end of our time here, but I figured I would leave the final word with you. Any parting thoughts or any wisdom that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think if I have to tell someone anything in terms of just make sure that your assets are protected and lined up for your loved ones, especially with COVID. I think COVID made the reality of being ill or passing away real for a lot of people who thought that was a far-fetched issue. And so one of the things that I think the takeaway in the last year that we've learned, that life is so fragile and that our family members could be compromised just in terms of their health. And so making sure that you have those protections in place for your family, and making sure that you understand, at least receive an education on how to make those appropriate asset protection decisions is very, very important.
Gotcha. That's great. That's great advice. And as a reminder, everyone out there, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. That's the way the law tends to cut in a way, right? If you don't know the law, you can be hurt by the law a lot more than you'll be benefited by the law, or rather by ignorance of the law. So always working with a skilled and competent attorney is always the best bet. That's why we're here on the Attorney Post, introducing you to all sorts of attorneys who are at the top of their field, doing all sorts of great stuff. Catarina is one of them, and she is doing a great job there with Lawvex. So Catarina, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with me today. I will put links to all your information down below. If people want to find you online, where's the best place for them to go?
They can go to www.lawvex.com. If they want some more information, our email address is info@lawvex.com. And we do have some great videos online as well on our website, just general estate planning questions. We also handle eviction, so we have videos on that as well. So a lot of education for you on our website.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Justin West. I am your host. I've been talking with Catarina Benitez of Lawvex. We've had a great conversation today. All of the show notes below will include links to the website and how to get a hold of them, the email address, and everything else that she just shared with us. So that being the case, we're going to go ahead and sign off here. But once again, thank you very much for being with us today, Catarina. A great conversation.
Thank you, Justin.
And I invite everyone out there to leave a comment down below, and feel free to visit their website, lawvex.com. That being the case, you've been listening to the Attorney Post. Stay tuned for more great interviews with more great attorneys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.